me to discuss this is
Joy Ubem. It is a program that discusses various national and international matters.
A Nigerian should be able to live and work in a hospitable and safe environment in the north or south or east or west of Nigeria.
We cannot have a country where politicians do things and get away with them and expect that the citizens will do otherwise.
Daily Communion for the love of God and neighbor.
Good morning. Welcome to Daily Communion on Catholic Television of Nigeria. It feels good to be back here with you this beautiful morning. I am Joy Ubem.
And my name is Arthur Ejofo.
We have quite a number of activities on our lineup this morning. And as usual, we begin with daily affirmation, health tips with Nelly, and then our fitness team. Stay with us.
Hello, good morning. I hope you slept well. I did. I'm here to motivate you this morning. I don't know how you went to bed last night, but I'm more concerned on how your morning will be. Do you know that it is never the right time to give up? Galatians chapter 6 verse 9 tells us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." So why not stand up today? Get on with what you're supposed to do. Do not lazy about. Do not throw in the towel, because in the end, it will be your fault. But at the right time, with the right intention, the right motivation, once you put up the mindset to achieve something today, is at the nick of time sometimes that you achieve what you want. So get up, push, and keep going. Have a beautiful day ahead.
Welcome to Health Tips on Daily Communion. We always tell you on this program that it is expedient for you to take care of your health. What's our slogan? If you don't take care of your health, sickness will evade you like plagues and cut your life short. So take care of your health now for your total wellness and longevity. Today we are talking oral care. Do you know that mouth hygiene is crucial for maintaining overall health and well-being? Do you know that research suggests a link between gum disease and an increased risk of heart disease? Do you know that the bacteria from the mouth can enter the bloodstream and contribute to inflammation in the arteries? Do you also know that poor oral hygiene can lead to various health hazards? Today, we're talking breath of fresh air. I love this one. All right, now let's go. Inhale. That's breathe in. Exhale. That's breathe out. Now, there might not be a problem when you breathe in, but would there be a problem when you breathe out? We are talking about if you don't take care of your mouth, your breath will become foul. Bad odor. The thing about this mouth odor or bad breath or offensive odor, as the case may be, is that friends and family sometimes might not be able to tell you. So sometimes you want to talk and some people will be covering their noses or looking away from you or turning their heads away from you. Chances are that you may have mouth order because bacteria settles in the mouth. These bacteria that break down foods, especially sugars, they produce acid leading to tooth decay and cavity if you do not take care of your mouth. Number 2 will be bad breath, which is the offensive odor. It is called halitosis. Poor oral hygiene can cause persistent bad breath due to the accumulation of bacteria, food particles, and plague that might have stayed in the mouth over time. Number 3, it will cause you mouth sores and infections. Poor oral hygiene can lead to mouth sores such as canker sores and increase the risk of your infection in your mouth. Number 4 is respiratory infection. Bacteria from the mouth can be aspirated into the lungs, leading to respiratory infections. All right, now that is about poor oral hygiene. If you have all this, it will cause you some health hazard. What should you do that you will not come down with these health hazards? Number 1, you have to brush your teeth at least twice a day with any good toothpaste. We are good, especially those ones that contains fluorides and the rest of them. Number 2, you can use floss daily to remove food particles and plague from your teeth after eating. You see, some people use toothpicks in order to remove all those things. You just think it's a formality. No, it's not a formality. If you leave those things in there in your teeth, they causes health hazards to the human's body. Number 3, you have to use an antibacterial mouthwash to kill bacteria from your mouth. Use antibacterial mouthwash. Number 4, visit the dentist regularly for checkup. A lot of you do not go for checkups, especially when it has to do with your mouth or with your teeth. You just don't bother nobody. It is good that you visit a dentist for mouth checkup all the time as much as you can. Then avoid as much as possible sugary and acidic foods and drinks that can contribute to tooth decay and erosion. All right, by practicing good mouth hygiene, you can reduce the risk of these health hazards and maintain a healthy lifestyle. So, you didn't know all this? Well, now you know. Now that we have educated and enlightened you, we believe that the information is at your fingertips and you will make the best of it for your benefit. The best time, the best day to practice healthy living is today, and the best time is now. Remember, I always remind you on this program, do not forget to exercise daily. Now, we will join our fitness center for some healthy exercise that will keep us going. I am Nelly Frank, your healthy living therapist. Let's go exercise.
Good morning. We are back on the morning fitness drill with your favorite coach, Abba, as always, Abba Fitness. So today I'm going to take you on a bench over row, which is more of a neutral workout. We don't need a modify or advance. Everybody can do it. Let's go.
Welcome back to the discussion segment of Daily Communion on Catholic Television of Nigeria. We're reaching you from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, this beautiful morning. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, the 21st day of April 2025, and was buried on the 26th of April 2025. Today we take a look at the life and times and the legacy of Pope Francis and the Conclave. And joining us in our studio this morning, we have the Director of Communications Department, Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja, and the Director of Catholic Television of Nigeria, talking about Reverend Father Patrick Alumuku. Welcome to Daily Communion, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, Father. How did you receive the death of the Pope? How did you feel when you learned he died?
Well, the death of the Pope was a big shock to the whole world and to myself in particular, because on that Easter Sunday, when the Pope appeared in St. Peter's Square, being brought in, I was so elated to see him. I knew what it meant for him not to be present at that ceremony where he was supposed to officially pronounce his Orbi et Urbi. That is the Pope's message at Easter or Christmas to the world and to the city of Rome. It's Orbi, referring to the orbit, and the Urbi as in the urban or urban city of Rome. So that's a message that everybody looks forward to. The Pope also then wishes everybody a happy Easter or happy Christmas, as the case may be. Certainly for him, it would have been a big pain for him not to be there. So he wanted to be there. He couldn't speak. He had his message already read to the people, but he appeared there at least to wish them a happy Easter. And what a wonderful thing he said. Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua. Literally, my dear brothers and sisters, wish you a happy Easter. You know, that's much he could say. We heard that with a lot of effort on his part, with a husky voice and all that. But it was so wonderful to see the Pope and the cheers of hundreds of thousands of people in St. Peter's Basilica made us so happy that we could see the Pope again. For me, after having said that, if he had gone back to rest for another 2 months without appearing, he would still have been okay. Then he would have recuperated better and come back. And that was my hope. Unfortunately, on Monday morning, I had my Monday morning mass and come out, and I guess I was doing something in the house when somebody sent me a message. Have I seen that the Pope has died? And I was just saying, well, you know, people send all kinds of messages all the time. They've been saying all kinds of things since the Pope was sick. I said, this is maybe just one of them. You know, we saw the Pope yesterday. How could you play this kind of game, to us now? But as the minutes passed, I started receiving more messages, and then I went onto the internet and found that it's true. And I went to the Vatican website, the Vatican News, and found that it was true that the Pope had actually passed away at about 7:35 that morning. Very sad indeed. So we had a very sad moment. But at the very same time, I think that it was a great moment, because for us, Easter and the Feast of the Resurrection is a moment of a great hope and of joy. The Pope having died at that particular occasion, for me, signifies how close he is to God, and it's a blessing indeed in disguise for him. And so I do hope and pray that he is in heaven.
Okay, Father, I would like to ask you, were there signs that the church was preparing for this moment?
I won't say so, because when the Pope was in the hospital, we were not too clear what was going to happen, because I was receiving the daily news from the Vatican every morning and every evening. And at some point, the information was that he was in a very critical moment. He was in a very critical stage. But having passed through that and having been discharged from the hospital, it appeared as if all was okay, and that the Pope was going to get back. It was a matter of recovering properly. He was given 2 months by the doctors, and that after that he would be well again. So the church, I think nobody was prepared for this moment.
Again, I would like to look at the traditional mourning period of a Pope in the Catholic setting. Now the Pope is buried. Can you put us through the traditional mourning of a Pope in the Catholic setting?
Well, having been buried, the church has a 9-day of mourning, the famous Novem Diales, in which the church will mourn, and then the conclave will start. During this period, we are encouraged to pray for the Pope at all masses, at all occasions. So all over the world, masses are being said for the Pope who has died and who has now been buried. And so we're moving close to when the cardinals will meet at the conclave. And the date has already been fixed for the 7th of May. And so on the 7th of May, the cardinals will meet and we'll start the process for the election of a new Pope.
Okay, let's talk about the life and times of the late Pope. Were there some of his legacies in particular that stood out for you?
Well, we had a very special Pope in Pope Francis. First, when he got elected, he chose the name Francis, which was not the name anyone had chosen before as Pope. We had looked at the life of St. Francis of Assisi, a young man whose story is very outstanding. He came from a very rich family, St. Francis. And yet one day he went to church and heard the gospel reading, which said, if you really want to be a follower of man, go sell all you have and give to the poor and come follow me. We are told that he left. He sold all his possession and what he owned, and left, went to become a religious, become a priest, offering whatever he had. And then eventually he founded the a group of young people called the mendicantes. That is, people who are beggars for the Lord. He went along with his team and they begged and found help for the poor people of his own time. He loved nature. He praised God for the nature that God had created, for the skies, for the trees, for the sea, for the land, for the birds, for the animals, and he loved God's creation. So Pope Francis took to this young man, and this was part and parcel of what led him. He worked for the poor. He helped to restore the ecological system that we have, where the earth was being depleted, and encouraged the whole world to ensure they took care of nature, saying to us that this is the only world we have, which was given to us by God. He also went further to work closely with priests, bishops, and the church in the poor areas of the world. And one of the things that he did, which was phenomenal, was that he appointed, he looked at bishops who were working in very difficult conditions, in very poor little towns, and elevated them, to the level of cardinals. So he looked at the periphery of the world, all over the world. He looked at areas, at people who, seem not to be much counted, because before him then, cardinals were people who were usually in the big cities,
Archdiocese.
in the archdioceses and so on and so forth. And so he appointed people from little dioceses in the world to become cardinals. Many of those who will be electing the next pope in the next couple of days or weeks. We had one in our country here. He appointed Bishop Opaleke, also of the Diocese of Ekulobia, little known. You would have thought of big places like Port Harcourt or
any other
diocese, for the city for that matter. But then he appointed someone from a very little diocese.
Now, Father, just to cut in, because you touched a very important part of what is trending, the Pope's comments and leaning towards the effect of climate change in the climate change to the world, and linking it with St. Francis' love for nature. Now, some people will argue, why would a spiritual leader be more inclined to things that are related to climate change instead of not being more focused on projecting the teachings of Jesus Christ? And these are some questions some people are asking. Why don't you leave that kind of leaning to the secular leaders like the US, South Africa, Nigeria, UK? Why would a head of a spiritual bloc be talking about climate change?
There's a relationship between spirituality and the life we live in the world. And we must understand that to see the importance that Pope Francis put on the environment. Because at creation, we are told at the beginning of the Bible that God created the world. He created the earth, He created the heavens, He created the waters, He created the trees, the animals, and He finally created man. All these are part and parcel of God's creation, and we are part of the life of God, of the life our spiritual life, therefore, is not just about we ourselves, but also about our surroundings. And if we destroy the surrounding which God created, then we eventually destroy the life of man, and his spiritual life is also affected. Basically, this is the background to this. And you know that for decades now, the world has been fighting to restore the depletion of the ozone layer, which is causing a lot of problems to the world. You know, the climatic change, which is affecting us, where it's getting hotter and hotter. For example, for us here, you know, where people who had experienced a lot of snow are no longer experiencing that snow. You know, there are creatures there that had lived
Extinct, almost.
Yeah, that had lived, you know, that live, rather, put it that way, that live under those conditions, and the depletion of that making them go extinct, you know. Here we are experiencing a lot of challenges. The Sahara Desert is eventually being depleted, and so on and so forth. And eventually, you know, here we are putting a lot of emphasis on growing trees so that we could maintain some level of sanity in our situations. I think this is what drove Pope Francis towards insisting that unless you do something about the environment, you destroy the world and you destroy humanity in the long run.
Another criticism of the papacy of Pope Francis was more on immigration. It is said that he's not calling out, but he wasn't calling out bad governance and bad government in developing countries. And if an economy is not good, people will continue, if I use the Nigerian parlance, to japa outside. So Pope Francis was being criticized for not being openly calling out corrupt government, and rather he was encouraging developing nations to allow migration, but he was not addressing the core issue of migration, which is corruption and bad governance.
I think that Pope Francis was very conscious of the words of Jesus Christ, who say that the poor you will always have with you. And there are countries in Africa and countries even in Latin America and some other parts of the world, even in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe, that have great difficulties. And in the last 20 years, at the end of communism, when the borders were open for people in Eastern Europe to come into Western Europe, a lot of those from Eastern Europe began to migrate towards Eastern Europe. I mean, towards Western Europe. That is, to countries like Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and so on and so forth. And there's no way you can stop that. There is no way. Secondly, there's a wave of insecurity and violence in a number of countries. In the Middle East, for example, in the last decade or two, and someone described it as, shaking a boat in which people are, so that people can, try to find survival. You know, some will jump out of the boat, a few will remain. Many people, because of the crisis in the Middle East and even parts of North Africa. You remember when there was this crisis in North African countries and there were protests all over.
Arab Spring.
And the Arab Spring, people began then to find a way to go out. Now, there's migration all over. In Africa, of course, you could call out corruption, you could call for the end of corruption and so on, but it does not end corruption immediately. It might reduce corruption to some level, but it doesn't end corruption immediately. And therefore, the people are bound to move to where they think there are options. And there are options opening up, here and there in the world. Canada is looking for workers now, and there are many people who are moving into that. The UK is looking for people who can take care of their old people in the hospitals and things like that. People have to move in there. So migration is something which is an activity of our own times, and we need to pay attention to that. And people are moving. Some of them are really desperate, moving into areas where they think they need to get some little help. And what they were getting was being sent back, people like that, from some countries. And the Pope was saying, this is not right. For there have been migrations all the time in history. People have migrated. The Americans who feel comfortable at the moment migrated into America because they were being persecuted in England, in other countries in Europe. They had difficulties, so they moved over and migrated. So this migration is a continuous process, and so when people do migrate, then what do you do? Stop them from migrating who have already been going through some persecution and challenges and difficulty. The Pope was saying this is not normal, and this is not Christian. For the Christian must receive the person who comes to him, who is homeless, and so on and so forth.
Okay. But do you think there are any areas his papacy failed to address?
Well, I don't think that there's any particular area that he failed to address. Every Pope comes in, and his role is not to look at problems from A to Z and say, "I'll address problems from A to Z." He emphasizes the area where he thinks is most important at any point to be emphasized. I guess that if we were to have an African Pope, for example, he might address more African issues, the problems that he has experienced, But generally, a Pope kind of picks issues which he thinks are most important before him during his papacy and addresses them.
Okay. So historically, what do you think we should remember Pope Francis for?
Oh, well, we've said them here. We've said he loved the poor people. He cared for nature. He cared for those who were marginalized, and so looked at the peripheries of the world, paid attention to them. He visited all the continents. Nigerians would have loved to have him visit Nigeria.
Yes.
But I mean, we have had in recent times the visit of 2 popes, and many African countries were jealous of us having received popes here. So we can't complain. Besides, he was very close to us. When we were attacked by terrorists here, when priests were killed, he always raised his voice in Rome against what was happening. I think that he did fairly well.
Now, Father, Pope Francis has gone to be with the Lord, we'll pray. But how would his teachings, his outlook to life affect the future direction of the church?
Well, I think that Pope Francis taught us to love, and that is very key. At the heart of the Christian faith is love, and he taught us to love those who were in need. He taught us to love those who were lonely. He taught us to love those who were poor. He taught us to love those who were marginalized. This is very key. You know, Jesus Christ says to us that there are 10 commandments, but the greatest is love. And once there is love, there is everything. In fact, St. Augustine used to say, love God and do what you like. In other words, if you love God, then you are in the right direction to whatever you do is good, because the love of God then leads you in the right directions. And I'll say he had the love of God and also had the love of neighbor. So he was good to go.
All right. Thank you so much, Father, for finding time to be with us. We'll have to go on a quick break right now, and when we return, Father Alumunko is still in the house with us, and he'll be talking to us about the conclave. We've been taking a look at the life and times and legacy of Pope Francis, who died on Easter Monday, the 21st day of April. When we return back from our break, we'll take a look at the conclave, and our guest has been Reverend Father Patrick Alumunko, who is the Director of Social Communications Department, Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja, and also the Director of Catholic Television of Nigeria. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Keep on watching the Catholic television and do not leave it for one, or a lot of things will leave you.
Oh yes, CTV has been there for us. I mean, our major partners in this journey, this is not the first time. They've always come through for us, and I would like this station to grow beyond what it has been and doing. So yes, CTV is a must watch. Let's keep watching CTV, and let's also promote CTV.
CTV, the station that inspires hope.
The Pope has spoken for the underdogs, for the migrants, he has spoken about even this Trump's deportation of migrants. He's everywhere for the poor, for everything. He will use things that are given to him, billions and all that, for the poorest of the poor. So I, Rose Petra, I'm not just the only one missing him. And I must add that the next person taking over from him will have a shoe wider than life itself.
Death is inevitable. And death is painful. No matter the age of the individual, it is painful. However, we give glory to God that he lived to die at very old age. At 8 years, it's not a joke. At 8 years, in my own dialect, I am an Igbo man. In my own dialect, we call it Ozuagogo. That is, Ozuago means celebration. We pray we have a successful one, that God will raise for us another Pope who will start from where Pope Francis stopped.
In terms of his leadership role, it was very obvious that he was a man of compassion who followed the footsteps of Christ in the context of trying to embrace every person, irrespective of the person's background. And that particular approach helped a lot in terms of some persons coming back to church and also seeing the church in a very positive light, because he could reach out to people across the board. In fact, including people that ordinarily are seen as those who are not acceptable by the society. He reached out to all of them.
Pope Francis made it very clear. It's not, when I say that, it's not particular about Catholic Church. It's particular about how do we unite the world. And that is what, if you are in somewhere and you find out that somebody is talking about uniting the world, creating world peace, making the world an enabling place for human beings to flourish. I think there's something you can do in order to come back. Many people have come back to the Catholic Church, not because of our riches or what, but the man in his humility I don't know how I can explain that because his humility is overwhelming. Pope Francis was everywhere, was out talking to the heads of nations. Peace, peace, so that we will not have more displaced people around the world because it affects the world.
Each pope comes with the blessing and the gifts God has given him. Pope Francis came with a humane face of our Lord to meet the people at the grassroots and to probe their faith in God. This is something he kept. And for me, he has sustained it right from his inception of when he was made a pope, that he has been able to raise the hope, just as he's crowning it up with a jubilee of hope. He has raised the people's mind that God is there for us no matter the level is. To be frank with you, for me, I'm so privileged that this is the third Pope I'm meeting in my life. Pope John Paul II, when he came up, I saw him in 1982 in Kaduna, and I saw him also in 1998 here in Abuja. And I must say, each one of them, they have different gifts and the way that God has led them to bring the people of God to himself, which is what our Lord himself came to establish into the world, that we bring people to him. He portrayed the face of mercy to people. They should come to God in spite of who they are.
He had no barriers. Everybody mattered. Humanity, I would say, was his constituency. So we have lost a very great leader, a world leader, a moral authority. I would say somebody who was a moral compass because he spoke on moral issues, ethical issues, and he identified with the poor and marginalized and the downtrodden. So he was a great leader.
You're watching CTV.
Welcome back. We're still with our guest, Very Reverend Father Patrick Alumuku, the Director of Communications of the Archdiocese of Abuja and also the Director of the Catholic Television of Nigeria. Father Alumuku is a Vatican expert. He's having worked with the Vatican Radio and the Vatican environment for over 12 years before coming directly to head the Catholic Communication Department of the Archdiocese of Abuja. Also, Father Alumuku had been a person that has helped in forming priests in various dioceses. So today we're not just talking to somebody who knows about the media, we're talking to somebody who is an expert in Vatican and Vatican affairs. Father, you're welcome back.
Thank you very much, Alpha.
Now, Father, you talked about the legacy of our beloved Pope Francis, and you said he taught us love and to help people in need, the lonely and the marginalized. But a lot of viewers at home would like to know there are some other issues he talked about, and especially the one that hits so much and has caused so much upheaval is the issue of blessing of people in same-sex marriage or same-sex relationship. Father, would you like to throw a light on this issue that was controversial from the Vatican?
Well, I think that the issue of same-sex marriage has been controversial for a long time, even before Pope Francis became Pope. It will be for quite a long time to come. I think that he found himself caught in the web of that discussion, and it is still a difficult issue to handle now. But I think that his mind was very well set as to what these people who are also human beings are. And he was basically saying, look, I do not promote your sinfulness, if it is sinfulness,
your lifestyle,
your lifestyle. But I love you as persons, but I do not promote your sinfulness. He had that difficulty all through, and so at some point he had to say, well, who am I even to judge? But just to show his sense of compassion to people who were caught up in this. And there are many people who are caught up in this kind of web, either through their peers when they're growing up, or by whatever system they found themselves in that kind of situation. I think that all he tried to do then was to say, look, these are human beings, and let us consider them as human beings.
Okay, Father, there's another issue, the issue that every other person thought has been settled by the late the Saint Pope John Paul II. And by the way, you met him in person. I'm sure, Father, you related with Pope John Paul II.
I did. I accompanied him to Abuja.
Wow.
In 1998 when he came for the Papa visit here.
Okay.
I was on advance party. And when we arrived there, we were sending back messages back to Rome to say this is how Nigeria was preparing for the visit. And we were together when he finally came here.
So the question here is, it is said that St. Pope John Paul II has settled the issue of women ordination. But Pope Francis had brought up the issue to the front burner, shaking up ancient laid down decrees of former popes, and this has to do with elevating women to even diaconate, and that is the purpose of the synod that might continue in the next papacy. What is your take on that? Women becoming priests.
I think that what Pope Francis did was ingenious. There was a lot of pressure about the place and role of women in the church, and he tried not to suppress it. If he tried to suppress it, he would have been seen as a pope who was not concerned about the feelings of the people, and he would have been tagged all kinds of names at that point. So he tried to allow the issue to be discussed and brought it up. I think that generally he felt that there was a need to not to keep women, as one man said, only in the other room, that the women had a role to play, but how far would it go? And he wanted to leave the church to discuss that. And of course, that came up at the synod. And during the synod, then it became very clear that the church, said yes, it's an important issue to be discussed. Women should be promoted, but women are not to be ordained priests and all that. And that's been cleared. Right now, at the point of his death, there is no controversy over that issue in the church, because the synod did that. If he had done it all by himself, it would have been a problem again. So he called the whole church together as a family and said, discuss these issues and let us see,
Are you saying that the issue
them.
has been settled about women ordination or diaconate, elevating women to diaconate? Has it been settled?
In his pontificate, it has been settled. Yes.
Okay, Father, I'd like to.
But see, what he did was he promoted women in the church and promoted even the lay people in the church. The prefect of the World Communications Dicastery in Rome, or the Vatican Dicastery for Communications, is run by a lay person. He appointed Reverend sisters to head offices in the Vatican that nobody had heard before. But this is possible. But in terms of ordaining anyone, he never said he wanted to ordain a woman, a deacon, or a priest, because it is not so in theology, and it is not in the mind of Christ. And that is what the church has held for 2,000 years.
Before we go into the issue of conclave, in your own thinking, how would you view Pope Francis? Was he conservative? Was he liberal? Or was he a reconciliator?
I think he held a position which you cannot say was a liberal. Neither was he a conservative. And yet those who held the role of being conservatives in the church thought he was being too liberal. And that is why he had problems even with our own Archbishop Vigano, who had been nuncio here in Nigeria in the past, and so on and so forth. They thought he was being liberal. But I think he actually held a middle role, trying to pull both the liberals back together and also pulling the conservatives together. There are many people who think that the church must always be very conservative. So there are those who are vouching for the possibility of going back to tradition and of going back to the priest backing the people and facing the altar, as was done in the past. And if you do that, you're going to create a major fracas, major problem in the church today. So the position of the Pope is a very delicate one. You're walking a very tight rope in which you're trying to pull those who want to
extreme right,
extremely liberal, and those who want to be extremely conservative. You're trying to see if you can pull them together. I think that is what he tried to do during his pontificate.
Okay, moving on to the conclave. Who can be a pope? Who qualifies to be selected as a pope? What qualifies such a person? What qualities are expected of a pope?
Well, it's generally say that, and the church has always heard that the pope must be a baptized Christian. But in recent centuries, this has always been so, because even those who have been pope have been Christians. But they have also been Christians at a particular level. So the cardinals are the ones who can be elected pope. You have to be a cardinal to be in the conclave. And so it is within that conclave that a pope is elected, and one of the cardinals is the one who can be elected, someone who is not more than 80 years old. So there are many cardinals in there, but some who are over 80 will not elect and not be elected. In fact, the process of the election is such that when the cardinals go into the Sistine Chapel, then they are all introduced, and after the introduction, the person in charge of the ceremonies says that all those who are not supposed to vote or be voted for are to leave, and it's referred to as the extra omnes. That is, all the others who are not supposed to be at that point can leave. So cardinals are over 80, but when it comes to election, only those who are 80 years can stay back.
Okay. For the purpose of our viewers who are not familiar, can you explain the process of selecting a new pope?
Well, it's a fairly simple process of election where there are ballots that are held, and every day there are 2 ballots. One ballot, there are 2 ballots there are 4 ballots in the course of the day. 2 ballots in the morning and 2 ballots in the afternoon. That's 2 before lunch and then 2 after lunch. I would like to go back a little bit so as to explain the whole idea of a conclave. History tells us that in the past, it was not always easy for cardinals to come to Rome and to elect a pope. People had to come from long distances. So many of them took time either by horse, came by horses, or they came by chariots to Rome. It would take many days or even weeks for some who could come for the election of the Pope. And when they came, they were exhausted. And they would start the process. And they would remain in there trying to stay as long as possible as they could before they would elect the Pope and go back home. And if you know the Italian and the Roman lifestyle, you know that they have very good food. Very good food. So the cardinals came in, ate very good food, and remained for a long time, sometimes a month or 2. They were not able
like a leave, vacation.
Yeah, I was not able to elect the Pope. And so the idea of a conclave actually came at one point when they decided that, because they were taking too long a time to elect a Pope, and therefore they were going to lock them in the room with a key. So the word conclave actually means with a key, conclave, that they would not get out until they have elected the Pope, So, and they gave them all the food that they had to do with inside that room. And it made it easier then for them to now say, okay, well, since we have no other option, then let's make sure that we finish this election as soon as possible. So the conclave comes from that kind of background. Now, when the cardinals have settled down for the ballots, they need 2/3 majority for the person who is to be elected Pope. So in the beginning, there may be 5 names or even 10 names that may appear, and gradually they start to, people listen to these names, and then they begin to make a choice, because next time I'm going to vote, maybe this one who perhaps got a little more, or this other person. And so in that way, they begin to shape,
where the church is
the way to get the right person who will be elected Pope.
Father, I'd like to ask now, is it really about power, or what is the role of Holy Spirit in the conclave? Because if the cardinals are going to go there and based on your antecedent, then it's just going to be mere human exercise. What's the role of the Holy Spirit in choosing a Pope?
Well, the conclave is filled with prayer. The cardinals go in, they are praying morning, afternoon, evening, and night, and asking the Spirit to guide them. Today, they are not allowed to use any telephone so as not to have any external contact. So they cannot take the phone, they cannot make any calls, they cannot send messages, they cannot receive messages during that period. But thankfully, it is becoming much shorter now. So it's becoming also easier for them, to live now without contact with outside. And we're told that it's only in cases of emergency that maybe that's been brought to a particular person who is affected, for him or her, for him, then to make a call, if there is at all. So I think that because because of less distraction, then it becomes easier for them to have this election within a shortest possible time. In the last election of Pope Francis, it took only a day and a half for them to close the conclave. Also because he had appeared very well or powerfully strong in the previous election. And therefore, when they came, they said, well, he lost the last time, but he's in good standing, he's in a good position, so we elect him. It didn't take a long time for the election to take place.
Okay, Father, what key factors influence this process of selection among the cardinals?
Well, a number of factors at different times, indeed. There are no particular factors. Okay. For example, when Pope John Paul II was elected at 58 years old, that's quite a young age.
Yes.
It was that Pope Paul VI had died, and then Pope John Paul the First was elected, who lived only for 31 days, and then died. And then he had to come in. One of the considerations then was, well, we are losing popes. Is it because of health or age? So let's find someone who is strong and who can take the church on for a number of years. He ended up being Pope for 25 years, and so it can be that. It can also be that, oh, well, this Pope did this and that, as in the case of Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, that he had worked so well with the previous Pope, Pope John Paul II, and therefore he would be able to carry on the legacy of John Paul II at that particular point. John Paul had done such wonderful work, and I usually say that I'm very proud to have been a staff of the Vatican under his pontificate. The impact that he made of the church all over the world, on Africa, for Nigeria in particular. He loved Nigeria in particular. Often we went to see him, to meet him at the morning mass when some Nigerian delegates came for pilgrimage or for visits, and we brought him. And every time he met Nigerians, he would say, John Paul II would say, God bless Nigeria. I have often said, I never heard him say that of other nations. But when he met Nigerians, he would always say, God bless Nigeria. Wow. So as I say, it could be for one reason or the other. But as we said earlier, it's a spirit that directs the cardinals. And they cannot be wrong. They cannot be wrong.
Yes, okay. Father, how does the selection of the Pope affect the outside world, especially the non-Catholics?
Well, the Church has a great influence in the world, and the Vatican has a strong moral is a strong moral pillar in the world. So when a pope is elected, he is not just a leader of the Catholic Church, but of the world in general. And I've been trying to listen to some of the leaders of the world, but also of Christian churches, including those in Nigeria, who are very involved in the messages of the Pope, and they are praising Pope Francis for what he has said and what he has done and how he has led, and so on and so forth. So the Catholic Church is not the only one that's affected by the leadership of a Pope. The United Nations, because the Vatican has a position at the United Nations, is highly respected. The position of the Catholic Church is highly respected when he speaks on particular issues, whether they are moral, whether they are spiritual, even if they are political, and even if they decide to ignore what the church has said, it never gets diminished, the position that the church takes. So it takes a moral position which is important for our world today.
Okay, in line with my previous question, do you think there are any key factors in this present that may influence the selection of the new Pope, in this particular selection that is about to take off?
The conclave.
Yes.
Well, I think that what we are concerned right now is to ensure that the legacy of Pope Francis is continuous.
Yeah.
I think that he died abruptly. Let's put it that way. We saw him ailing, but we thought, give him 2 months and he was going to bounce back. It's a surprise to everyone, especially the way he died, that he didn't conclude in a very planned way. I think that we'll be happy to have someone who will continue with some of the legacies he left behind.
Okay.
Now, Father, before we close this segment, I would like to ask you a question I think a lot of viewers at home will be longing that you answer. And that is, what would you think that will be the challenges that the new Pope will immediately face?
Well, some years back, when John Paul was ill, when he was about to leave the scene, many people thought that Cardinal Arinze would be Pope. And the reason was very clear. There's a book that one of the bestsellers in Rome about the Vatican at that time, which is out there. I was reading about the next Pope. The reason was they felt that Cardinal Arinze, who had been the president of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, would be the best person because of the rise of Islam in the world. And failed because he had been dealing with all other religions, including Islam, that he would be able to know how to find solutions to the Islamic situation. That Islamic situation is still on today. And I think that it's important for the church not to lose sight of that, to find someone who, in continuation with the work of Pope Francis, is able to look at the radical Islam that is growing in many parts of the world today. And I think that from our own perspective, it will be important for us to find, and very, very useful for us to get a Pope who understands Islam, who can help to turn the tide of Islam fundamentalists especially.
Right.
He tried to do what he could. He went to the Middle East. He visited them. In fact, at one point, he had to cut down his visit, or rather, he had to replan his visit when he was not feeling well. But he didn't stop that visit. He went over to the Middle East to meet them and to say to them that he thought there was a need for us to talk together. How can you say you believe in God when you hate people? How can you say you believe in God when you can take a gun and shoot people? How can you say you believe in God and yet innocent people like priests, nuns, and ordinary people who have done no harm to you, you kidnap, you maim, and you put in conditions that are not best described, and kill others. So these are the issues I think that, and this is happening not only in here in Nigeria. It's growing in the Sahel. It's growing now. If you go down to the southern part of this continent, it's growing out there also in Mozambique, in Angola. The Al-Shabaab is doing what it's doing in Somalia and in Kenya and so on and so forth, and other countries as well. So any pope who wants to be to make an impact on the church today must also consider, must have a good knowledge and a good strategy on how to call those who believe in God to think together and to find a common ground for relating with others. Certainly, you cannot say you love God when you hate your neighbor. St. John says that. Anyone who says, I love God and I hate my neighbor is a liar, St. John says.
All right. Is there a possibility of an African pope, a black pope, from this present selection that is about to take off?
There's always been the possibility of a black pope.
All right.
I told the Italian media team that called me in the course of the week to say that, they're talking about an African pope. There have been 3 African popes in history. Go and do your research. So this will be the 4th pope, if he's an African. If he's elected, this will be the 4th African pope if he is elected. So I don't think that there's a problem about having an African pope. I think that what we are looking for in a pope is someone who understands the love of God and who understands the love of mankind, and who is willing to carry on the teaching of Jesus Christ. That is the kind of person we are looking for as a pope. He could be an American, he could be an African, he could be an Indian, he could be from Eastern Europe or any part of the world. It is not the color of the skin that is important for the person to be a pope. What is important is that he has in his heart the love of God and love of humanity, and that he understands the teaching of the church and that he can continue with that teaching.
Well, viewers, we've been listening to Very Reverend Father Patrick Alumuku. Father Patrick Alumuku, like I earlier said, had worked in the Vatican for about 12 years. In fact, he worked directly with Saint Pope John Paul II and has worked in the media section of the Vatican. Also, he is the head of communications of the Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja and also the director of the Catholic Television of Nigeria. He was also a former vocation director of various dioceses in Nigeria. So, Father Patrick, thank you, Father, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Arthur.
So we'll go on a quick break right now, and when we return, Daily Communion continues. You stay with us.
Brothers and sisters, in these days, the whole world is talking about the Pope. In the past 2 weeks, all news media, don't have to be Catholic or Christian. I was in Rome for the funeral of His Holiness the Pope. It was wonderful. And while I was there, I kept thinking, the Pope, this is the successor of Peter. When Peter died, who was there? Maybe a few Christians were there for his burial. And now the whole world, including Trump and all the heads of states. Our head of state was too busy, he couldn't make it. Well, they tried. They sent the person they considered the highest Catholic in their government. So they sent our brother, Godswill Akpabio, the president of the Senate, who led the delegation that represented Nigeria on the occasion. Of course, since the head of state was not there, we were not among those on the front row on that day. He had to sit behind because that's where the representatives are. But it was good at least we were there. They mentioned Nigeria. I'm saying these days, the whole world is talking about the Pope. If it is not the dead Pope who was laid to rest in a massive funeral, we are talking about who is next Pope, who is going to be the next Pope. And what is happening in Rome, in the Sistine Chapel, in the conclave, from what those 135 cardinals will do in the Sistine Chapel. There are 135 of them, all of them under 80 years, which is why your cardinal is too old for that kind of job. By the time we are 81, we leave this kind of job to the younger cardinals. It is clear to everybody now that the Pope is a very important person, not only for the Catholic Church, but to the whole world. Why is the Pope so important? Because the Pope is the successor of Saint Peter. That is his major title, successor of Peter. I was with my fellow cardinals in Rome until Thursday evening. And every day we were meeting and discussing about the church. We are not campaigning for who will be Pope. The cardinals don't campaign. We only talk and pray. Speak about what kind of person we think we need to be a Pope. And as we're talking, we know that the new Pope is among us there. But we make it clear. We are looking for a successor of St. Peter. We are not looking for a successor of Pope Francis. We are looking for a successor of St. Peter.
I believe today's show was worth your time. I remain Joy Ibem. See you tomorrow morning.
And I am Arthur Ejofo, hoping to see you same time, same station.